Are fascinating, but I'm just going to ask you actually to give slightly shorter answers so that we can get everybody in. Simon Fell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come back to social media platforms, but before I do, you published a report in July around hateful extremists using the pandemic as a platform to spread conspiracy theories. I'm interested to know what your assessment will be as to how that disinformation will spread going forwards and the effect of it.
So I think disinformation and conspiracy theories are fundamentally a key tactic for extremist groups. It's an everyday bread and butter tactic for extremist organisations and individuals. Social media have amplified conspiracy theories in a way that we've just never seen before. So if you look at, say, the Great Replacement theory, that was a theory around 20 years ago that was very much confined to the fringes of our society. That has now become a mainstream conspiracy theory, not only in our country, but in many other parts of the world, and has directly contributed inspiring terrorists to carry out terrorist attacks. If you look at now QAnon, that's another conspiracy theory. How that's now infiltrating into the UK, and how more and more people are being exposed to conspiracy theories and disinformation. So it's a tactic used by extremists to spread extremist narratives and extremist propaganda. And my concern is, again, we don't have a very sophisticated strategy to deal with that. And again, I think this is where some of the things that we want to propose in terms of the online harms bill is to classify and devise a classification system when it comes to extremist material, when it comes to conspiracy theories, because no one's going to have a problem in harmless conspiracy theories about whether Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, for example. But actually, this type of hateful extremist propaganda where, say, if people on social media platforms are saying we must deliberately infect Jews and Muslims, it was Jews who created the virus, engaging in that type of hateful extremist propaganda through the use of conspiracy theories, we don't have a sophisticated approach to dealing with that, and we have to get better at addressing that.
Thank you. Can I just pick you up on the social media platforms, because quite rightly you're talking about online harms and the role of the government in creating a framework there, but I'm interested in your assessment of how well the platforms themselves are responding to this content in terms of taking down offensive material and hateful content, and also the divide, if there is one, between what might be seen as the traditional social media companies and their platforms and some of these new platforms like BitChute and Gab and others.
So, I mean, I and my commission have had many conversations with social media companies, and I think when it comes to illegal terrorist content, it's much more simpler. It's much more easy and it's clarified in law what that looks like, and we know the Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit are regularly taking down that material. In the Online Harms Bill, extremism has been defined as being lawful but harmful. Like I said earlier, I don't see any policy proposals in dealing with that. And again, it goes back to what does the government mean by extremism? Because that's a question that social media companies put to me. They'll say, well, yes, we want to play our part, but the government haven't given us a definition or haven't provided us with clarity on what do you mean by extremism. And so again, they put that back to the government and say, it's your problem, you're not telling us what that looks like and what we should be actually, what kind of material it is that we should be taking down. So I think we've got to overcome that. We shouldn't give any room for social media companies to evade their responsibility of responding to this type of material. I mean, that's why we are doing the legal review, because I said earlier, I think some of this material, which is currently classed as lawful, should be made illegal. But also, secondly, I think for us as a way forward in terms of dealing with online extremism, my policy proposal to the government is that depending on who that regulator is, at the moment it's suggested that Ofcom would be dealing with this material. I would say, actually, I believe the Commission should be dealing and assessing online extremism. We want to put together a very transparent and rigorous classification system. So if you think of something like the classification system for drugs, I think that's something that needs to do with extremist material, because using just a single definition on its own is not going to be helpful, because there's such a diversity of extremist material out there. So I believe that the Commission should be the body that deals with assessing extremist content online, and that's my proposal to the government. And I think also that the government then there should be a duty on social media companies, a public duty to have due regard to our recommendations. That way we're making it much more difficult for social media companies to evade their responsibility, and we're providing the clarity that they rightly seek.
Thank you. And last question, and it may be a slightly unfair one. Just in terms of the platforms themselves, is your assessment that they are willing to engage if government takes that step forward, or are some of them which badge themselves as freedom of speech platforms, or whatever the terminology may be, are they less willing to take that step?
So I think the mainstream platforms are willing to engage. The alternative platforms that you're referring to, they boast about the fact that they are less regulated, that they are free from any type of censorship. I think we are going to struggle with those platforms. So I think recognising that difference is really important.
Thank you.
Andrew Gwynn.